The vote was already over before Ren finished speaking. He could tell by the way Orun leaned back in his seat. That slow, heavy lean of a being who has already made up his mind and is simply waiting for the formality to end. Orun was the senior Drathari delegate, broad-shouldered, dark-scaled, with amber eyes that looked at Ren the way a person looks at a child trying to explain something complicated. Ren kept talking anyway. He laid out the numbers: human population, human fleet size, human occupied space. He explained what the Vorgeth had already done to two smaller civilizations near the outer rim. He used calm words and clear data, and he did not raise his voice once because he had learned a long time ago that the council responded better to calm than to urgency. When he finished, the chamber was quiet for exactly 4 seconds. Then Arun spoke. "The human species," he said, addressing the full council rather than Ren directly, "has no natural armor, no regenerative biology, no venom, no exoskeleton. Their bones fracture, their skin tears. Their lifespan is so short that many of us in this room will outlive 3 generations of their kind. They come from a world that is, by certain measures, hostile to life, and yet they remain the least physically formidable species to ever achieve space travel." He paused. He let that land. "We cannot commit council warships to protect a species that cannot protect itself. The Vorgeth would sweep through human space in a matter of months. Every ship we send there is a ship we lose. We do not throw good resources after bad odds." There were murmurs, not disagreement, agreement. The vote happened. It was not close. Earth's request for formal military protection under the Galactic Council Defense Compact was denied by a margin of 31-4. Ren wrote the number down in his notebook. He had a habit of writing things down even when he did not need to. It helped him think. He thanked the council for its time. He picked up his papers. He walked out of the chamber and into the long corridor outside, where the air recyclers hummed and the lights were the pale blue-white of deep station fluorescence. He stood there for a moment. Then he kept walking. The Steadfast was docked at Orion Reach's lower military ring, 3 transit levels down from the council chambers. It was a fleet carrier, long and gray and functional, the kind of ship that was not built to look impressive but always managed to anyway simply because of its size. Ren found Admiral Dara Singh in the operations room off the main hangar deck. She was standing over a table-sized navigation screen showing the outer rim, the Vorgeth expansion marked in red. There was quite a lot of red. She looked up when Ren came in. She read his face. She did not ask what happened. 31-4, Ren said. Dara looked back at the screen. Her hands were flat on the table edge. She was quiet for long enough that the soft hum of the ship's systems became noticeable in the silence. "Who were the 4, she said. "The Luvani, the Mevon, 2 independent systems that the council barely recognizes anyway." She straightened up. She crossed her arms. She looked at the red on the map, at the way it was moving steadily inward from the rim, consuming system after system with the slow patience of something that had done this before and expected to do it again. "Did Arun say anything worth remembering?" she asked. "He said we have no natural armor, that our bones fracture, that we are the least physically formidable species to achieve space travel." Dara was quiet again. Then she said, "He's right about all of that." Ren looked at her. "He just doesn't understand what it means," she said. "A species that survives a world like ours without armor, without venom, without any of it, doesn't survive by being strong. It survives by being something else." She picked up a marker and circled the Kethara system on the map. It was 3 weeks out from their current position, sitting right at the edge of where the red was starting to push. "The Luvani live there," she said. "They voted for us. They have no military. They have traders and farmers and about 10,000 people in that colony." Ren looked at the circle. "We are not a protection fleet," he said carefully. No, Dara agreed. We are a patrol group on a long-range mapping assignment that happens to route through that system. She said it the way someone says something that is technically true and entirely intentional at the same time. Ren thought about the 31 votes against them. He thought about Orun's slow backward lean. He thought about the red on the map and the way it kept moving. How long until we can be in position? He said. 3 weeks if we leave now. Ren put his notebook in his pocket. Then we should leave now, he said. Dara was already pulling up the departure orders on the screen beside her. She did not look like someone who was afraid. She looked like someone who had been waiting for someone to stop arguing and start moving. The Steadfast undocked from Orion Reach 40 minutes later. Nobody on the council noticed. Aliens called humans weak. Battle proved them terribly wrong. The Luvani Elder had never seen a human up close before. She had seen images in the trade catalogs that passed through Kethara's relay station. Small bipedal creatures, soft-skinned, no protective features visible. The catalogs listed them under a general category of non-threatening species. She had not given them much thought. Now one was standing in her office, which was a warm, low-ceilinged room carved into the pale stone of Kethara's southern plateau, and it was telling her to evacuate 10,000 people into the cave systems within the next 90 minutes. The human was Commander Isha Nair. She was not tall. She was not particularly imposing. She had dark eyes and a straight, focused way of speaking that gave the elder no room to insert a question between sentences. We have confirmed 14 Vorgath ships dropping into the outer edge of your system, Isha said. At current approach speed, they will reach orbital range in roughly 4 hours. Your cave networks in the south run deep enough to block most scan frequencies. Get your people down there now. The elder, whose name was Sova, looked at the human for a moment. You have 4 ships, Sova said. Yes. They have 14. Yes. What are you going to do with 4 ships against 14? Isha looked at her steadily. My job, she said. There was something in the way she said it. Not arrogance, not performance. It was the flat certainty of someone who had already thought through what was coming and made their peace with it before walking through the door. Sova stood up and began giving orders. Isha got back to the relentless 12 minutes before the Vorgath reached intercept range. Her crew was already at stations. The bridge was compact and quiet, screens showing the incoming ships as 14 red points moving in a neat, aggressive line. They were not spreading out. They were not taking defensive positions. They were moving in the way something moves when it does not expect resistance. She stood at the main console and looked at the formation. Spread pattern Delta, she said. Put us wide. I want them thinking they're looking at an advanced group. Her navigator, a young man named Pavan, glanced at her sideways. They might not think that when they see 4 ships. They might if the 4 ships are spread over enough space that they can't see the edges of the formation clearly. At this distance, their sensors will get the spread but not the count. Pavan ran the numbers. He nodded once and started entering the course adjustments. The 4 ships separated, wide. Wider than 4 ships had any real reason to go. The Relentless took the furthest left position, angling slightly nose forward to look like the outermost ship in a much longer line. On the screen, the Vorgath formation paused. Not stopped, paused. Just a slight reduction in approach speed that the sensors caught as a change in the red line's movement rate. Isha watched it. They noticed, Pavan said. Good, she said. Droth was not a being who experienced doubt often. He commanded 12,000 soldiers across his fleet. He had taken 4 systems in the past 2 years. He had never lost a significant engagement. He looked at the spread of human ships on his display and felt something he did not immediately have a name for. The ships were small. His intelligence on humans matched everything the Council said. Soft species, limited technology compared to Vorgeth standards, no battle history worth studying. But the formation was wrong. It was too wide. It was spread further than 4 ships needed to go for any tactical reason he understood. The only reason a force spread that wide was if they were the front of something larger, holding space for ships behind them that had not yet appeared on scan. He checked scan. Nothing behind them, clean space. He checked again. Still clean. He told himself it was a positioning error. He told himself humans probably just did not know proper formation doctrine. He told himself the obvious thing, which was that he was looking at 4 small ships and he had 14, and the numbers were simple. He gave the order to advance. He was still not comfortable. The Luvani moved fast once Sova gave the word. 10,000 people into tunnels in under an hour. They had done emergency drills before, though never for anything real. The cave entrances swallowed families in long, quiet lines, people carrying what they could, children passed from arm to arm. Glow lamps were lit along the tunnel floors. The stone above was solid and deep and old. Sova stood at the last entrance and watched her people go in. She thought about the human commander, the steady dark eyes, the flat certainty. 4 ships against 14. She did not know if the humans would survive. She did not know if the caves would be enough. She did not know very much right now. She knew one thing. Nobody had asked the humans to come here. The council had denied them. The compact had excluded them. There was no treaty, no obligation, no formal protection agreement between humanity and the Luvani. The humans had come anyway. She went into the tunnels with her people and pulled the stone door closed behind her. Above on the plateau, the wind was the only thing left moving. The red points on Isha's screen were getting closer. Aliens called humans weak. Battle proved them terribly wrong. The first thing Droth noticed was that the human ships did not behave like ships in pain. When a vessel takes a hit, it reacts. Engines stutter. It pulls back. It telegraphs. Every species Droth had ever fought did this. It was not weakness, it was physics. It was the natural response of a crew trying to keep their ship alive. The human ships did not pull back. The Relentless took a glancing strike to its rear quarter in the opening exchange. Droth watched the explosion bloom on his screen and waited for the ship to slow or veer or do anything that said it had registered damage. It angled instead. Not away. Sideways and forward, cutting across the nose of the Vorgeth ship that had fired at it. It came in so close that Droth's tactical officer actually flinched, because the distance between the 2 ships was below safe weapons range for both of them, which meant neither could fire without risk of the blast catching their own hull. The human ship used that moment to get behind. Droth recalibrated. This was going to take more attention than he had given it. Isha did not sit during battles. She stood at the main console with her feet slightly apart and her hands free, which her crew had learned to read as a sign that her brain was working faster than her hands were needed. When her hands were on the console, things were calm. When her hands were free and her eyes were on 3 screens at once, things were not calm, but they were under control, which was a different thing. "Yash is gone," Pavan said. Isha did not look up from the screen. She had seen it happen 30 seconds ago. The patrol ship Garuda, pilot Yash Kale, had taken a direct hit from a Vorgeth heavy gun and broken apart. There had been no time, no last transmission, just there and then not there. She noted it. She stored it somewhere that she would deal with later. Right now, later did not exist. 3 ships, she said. New spread. I want Vikram and Priya on the flanks. I want us center but moving. Do not hold any position for more than 40 seconds. 40 seconds is very short, Pavan said. That is why they will not be able to aim at us. She watched Droth's formation. He was good. She could tell by how fast he adjusted after her first 2 feints. A less experienced commander would have chased. Droth held his formation and tried to funnel her ships into a crossfire box. It was a solid tactic. She had read about it in 3 different manuals. She also knew how to get out of it. "Priya," she said into the comm, "I need you to look like you're retreating in 20 seconds, just for 12 seconds, then cut hard left and come back." Priya's voice came back clear. "Understood, 12 seconds of fake retreat. Make it convincing." "Isha, I have 4 holes in my hull. Everything I do is convincing right now." Despite everything, Isha almost smiled. 6 Vorgeth ships were damaged. 2 were out of the fight. 1 was spinning slowly with no engine response, dark and quiet. Droth pulled his fleet back 200 kilometers. He did this because he needed to think. He told himself that. It was a tactical pause. It was not retreat. He had 11 functional ships against 3. The numbers were still his. But the human ships were not dying the way they were supposed to. In his experience, when you damaged a smaller ship enough times, the crew started making mistakes. They got scared. They started flying with one eye on survival instead of 2 eyes on the fight. The mistakes compounded. The ship became predictable. The human ships were not becoming predictable. They were becoming more unpredictable. Like each hit they took made them angrier and faster instead of slower and careful. He was still trying to understand this when the open channel crackled. A human voice, calm, female, reading coordinates. "Vorgeth Ship 1, bearing 274, engine damage on port side, speed reduced by an estimated 30%. Vorgeth Ship 2, bearing 291, hull breach on forward section, weapons range compromised. Vorgeth Ship 4, bearing." Droth stared at the comm panel. She was listing them, every ship, their position, their damage, their weaknesses. Out loud on an open channel, like she was filing a report. Then she said, "Reinforcement group, this is relentless. We are holding position. Confirm ETA 40 minutes. We will keep the door open for you." Droth's tactical officer turned to look at him. Droth looked back at the empty space behind the human ships. His scans still showed nothing. The human was either talking to reinforcements that were still outside scan range, or she was talking to nobody. He could not tell which. He did not know how she sounded so calm. He did not know how a species with no armor and no regeneration and fracturable bones could take the losses they had taken today and still sound like someone who had everything under control. He did not like not knowing things. His tactical officer was waiting. Droth looked at the screen for a long moment. He gave the order to withdraw. 12 minutes later, the Vorgeth fleet entered faster than light travel and was gone. The Luvani caves were still full of people. Isha opened the comm to the surface. "Sova, it's clear, you can come up." The response took a moment. Then Sova's voice came through. "Are you still there?" "Still here," Isha said. A long pause. "All 4 ships." Isha looked at the place on the screen where the Garuda used to be. "3," she said. Aliens called humans weak. Battle proved them terribly wrong. The report arrived on Orun's data pad at the 4th hour of the station's rest cycle, when Orion Reach was quiet, and the council chambers were empty, and the only light in his private office came from the pad itself. He read it once. He set the pad down. He picked it up and read it again. 4 human ships, 14 Vorgeth. Engagement duration 2 hours and 17 minutes. Human losses 1 ship, 1 crew. Vorgeth losses 2 ships destroyed, 4 heavily damaged, 6 with significant combat damage. Vorgeth fleet withdrawal confirmed. Luvani colony, intact, 10,000 civilians, 0 casualties. He set the pad down a second time and sat in the dark for a while. The numbers did not add up the way numbers were supposed to add up. He had spent 40 years in council work. He understood military math. 4 ships against 14 had one outcome, and it was not this outcome. He thought about the word he had used in the chamber. Zoft. He thought about how certain he had been when he said it. By the next morning cycle, the report had reached most of the station. Not officially. Officially, the council had not received a briefing yet. But Orion Reach was a space station, and space stations were, regardless of their political importance, essentially sealed containers full of people who talked to each other. The Drathari Intelligence Office occupied a mid-level section of the station's eastern ring. It was staffed mostly by young analysts who had grown up reading about species assessments and threat evaluations, and had never actually seen combat footage in their careers. Pell had worked in the office for 2 years. She was younger than most of her colleagues. Promoted fast because she was very good at finding patterns in data that other people missed, and very bad at pretending. She had not found them when the pattern was inconvenient. She pulled every human record the intelligence archive held. It took most of the morning. What she found did not surprise her exactly, but it disturbed her in a specific way, the way something disturbs you when you realize a mistake you made a long time ago has been sitting quietly in the background this whole time. Humans had a history, a long and extremely violent one entirely with each other. No external enemy, no resource competition with other species, just themselves fighting themselves for thousands of years. And in all of that history, there was a pattern. Every time humans were pushed to the edge, something changed. Not just their tactics, not just their tools, something in the way they organized, something in what they were willing to do and how fast they were willing to do it. The adaptation rate was not normal. It was not the gradual biological or cultural evolution the Council's standard models predicted. It was fast. It was reactive. It was like the species had some internal mechanism that only fully activated under pressure. She looked at the Cathara numbers again. 3 ships remaining, damaged, crew reduced, and the commander had broadcasted fake reinforcement coordinates on an open channel while the battle was still happening. Pell thought about that for a long time. The ability to be afraid and function perfectly anyway. The ability to calculate under fire. The ability to lie convincingly while injured and outnumbered. These were not things the Council's assessment had measured. She started writing. Orun found her report on his pad 3 hours after she submitted it. He read the title, on the subject of animals that should not have survived their own world. He almost set it aside. It was an informal submission from a junior analyst. The title alone would have had most senior delegates dismissing it. He read it anyway, because he had been sitting with the Cathara numbers all day, and nothing in his experience was helping him process them. Pell's report was 11 pages. It was not polite. It was not diplomatic. It was the work of someone who had looked at data very carefully and then written exactly what the data said without softening anything for the audience. She had compared human adaptation rates to 9 other species across equivalent historical periods. Humans were not the fastest in raw technological development. They were not the strongest or the most durable. But in crisis response, specifically the window between a major threat appearing and a functional count response being deployed, humans were an outlier in every dataset she checked. The average gap for most species was measured in years, decades in some cases. For humans it was measured in months, sometimes weeks. She had a name for it in the report. She called it pressure response. The idea that the human species had evolved in conditions so consistently hostile that the crisis mode most beings experienced as an exception was, for humans, something close to a default state they could access on demand. The final line of the report was short. We were not looking at a weak species. We were looking at a species we had not correctly understood. Those are different problems with different consequences. Orun read the last line twice. He thought about the vote, 31-4. He thought about Ren collecting his papers from the podium, and walking out without saying anything. He thought about a commander with 3 damaged ships broadcasting coordinates into empty space, calm as someone reporting the weather, while a Vorgeth fleet twice her size sat 40 seconds away deciding whether to advance. He put the pad down. He opened a message to his staff. "Tell the council secretary I am requesting an emergency session. No, do not tell them what it is about yet. Just get me the room." He looked out the narrow window at the dark between the stars for a moment. Then he began writing what he was going to say. Aliens called humans weak. Battle proved them terribly wrong. Droth did not report what actually happened at Cathura. He filed the engagement as a scouting patrol that encountered unexpected resistance in an unmapped debris field, damaging several ships and necessitating withdrawal for repairs. He listed no enemy contact. He listed no human vessels. He had several reasons for this. The simplest one was that he had commanded 14 ships against 4 and had retreated, and there was no version of that sentence he could say out loud to his command council without consequences. The more complicated reason was that he was not sure what he would say even if he tried to tell the truth. He did not have language for what had happened. The human commander had sounded like she was winning even while she was losing a ship. She had listed his fleet's weaknesses back to him from memory while under fire. She had invented reinforcements that did not exist and almost made him believe in them. He did not know what to call a species that did things like that. He requested a proper war fleet instead. He got 40 ships. Admiral Dara Singh received the intelligence report on Vorgeth fleet movements 7 weeks after Cathara. She was in the Steadfast Operations Room, the same room where she had looked at the red on the map and made the decision to leave Orion Reach. The red had more surface area now. The report said 40 Vorgeth warships had been logged moving toward the Cathara system. No ambiguity. No debris field excuse this time. A full war fleet with troop carriers attached, which meant the Vorgeth were not planning to pass through. They were planning to stay. Dara had 7 weeks of work to show for it. She had pulled every human patrol group within reachable distance. She had sent messages to the Sorathi, a species with 2 heavy carriers and a 10-year-old debt to humanity going back to the Myra Station crisis, a debt they had never been formally asked to repay. She had sent a different message to the Mevon, who were small and built nothing larger than a scout ship, but who had been quietly gathering technical data on Vorgeth vessel designs for years because they were, as a species, constitutionally unable to leave an engineering problem alone. The Sorathi sent both carriers without being asked twice. The Mevon sent 17 data packages on Vorgeth hull composition, engine placement, and weapons cooling cycle timing. Dara's tactical team spent 4 days absorbing it and came out the other side looking like people who had been given a map to a place they were going to have to walk through anyway. The Luvani could not fight, but Sova sent tunnel maps, supply caches hidden through the southern cave network, and 200 Luvani civilians who had volunteered to run supply lines underground during the engagement, carrying ammunition and medical equipment through routes no scanner could follow because the rock above them was 300 meters of solid ancient stone. Dara looked at what she had assembled. It was not enough. She knew that clearly and without comfort. The numbers still favored the Vorgeth. Her ships were faster and her people were better rested and better briefed than any Vorgeth crew had reason to expect, but 40 was 40. She sent Isha a message. It said, "You held the door open last time. Let's see if we can do something better than hold it this time." Isha wrote back in 4 minutes, "I have ideas. Some of them are even reasonable." The Battle of Cathara began at the edge of the system and moved inward. Droth arrived expecting a patrol group. He found a fleet. Not a large fleet. He was not facing equal numbers, but the spread of what he saw on his scan was not what he had prepared for, and the first 30 seconds of any engagement were about preparation, and his was wrong. The Sorathi carriers were the first surprise. They were old ships and Droth had intelligence on them, but the intelligence was out of date because the Mevon data packages had included targeting upgrades that the Sorathi engineers had installed in 6 days working around the clock. The heavy guns on the Sorathi carriers hit 3 Vorgeth ships before Droth had fully processed that they were there. The human ships were the second surprise because they behaved exactly the way they had at the first engagement, which meant chaotic and close, and refusing to form lines that could be targeted cleanly. The third surprise was the Mevon data. Every Vorgeth ship had a weapons cooling cycle, 44 seconds. During those 44 seconds, the main guns could not fire. The human commanders knew this. Their timing was not accidental. Droth lost his first 2 ships in the opening wave. 2 of his senior commanders died with them. He pushed forward anyway because he had 40 ships, and the math still said push forward. The battle lasted 11 hours. It was not clean, and it was not a story that would be told simply. Ships died on both sides. Dara lost 2 of her best people in the second wave, commanders she had known for years, people whose names she put in the ship's log herself because she felt she owed them that much. The Mevon data ran out halfway through because the Vorgeth adapted, which they did faster than expected, which meant the human teams had to adapt back, which they did. The Luvani supply lines under the planet's surface kept moving. Ammunition came up through the rock. Injured crew went down. Medical teams worked in tunnels under 300 meters of stone. When it ended, 31 Vorgeth ships were destroyed or drifting without power. 9 made faster-than-light entry and disappeared. Droth was not on any of the 9. Dara stood in the operations room in the quiet after the battle. The screen still showed the debris field where Vorgeth's ships had been. Her crew around her was silent in the specific way of people who are very tired and not yet ready to feel what they feel. She picked up the comm. She called Isha. "Status," she said. "Still here," Isha said. Her voice was hoarse. "Hull damage, 2 crew injured, ship is flying." "Good," Dara said. She looked at the screen. "Go check on the Luvani." "Already on my way," Isha said. Aliens called humans weak. Battle proved them terribly wrong. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was called 6 days after the Battle of Kethara. Ren heard about it from a council secretary who sent him a short message, saying his attendance was requested, but not elaborating on why. He had been sitting on the steadfast for the past week helping Dara sort through the post-battle reports, which were long and detailed and full of names that needed to be accounted for. He came alone. The chamber was the same as always. High ceiling, cold blue-white light, tiered seating in a full circle, dozens of species in their designated sections. The air recyclers hummed. The translation panels glowed softly at each station. Ren sat at the same seat at the far end of the table where he had sat 8 weeks ago. He noticed Orun was already there. The Drathari delegate was looking at the table in front of him rather than at the room. He looked like someone who had been thinking about something for a long time and had finally decided what to do about it. The session opened with a standard review of the Kethara engagement. Numbers, timelines, losses on both sides. A tactical summary from the Council's military assessment office that was accurate and dry and missed most of what had actually happened, in Ren's opinion. Then Orun stood up. The room went quiet. Orun had that kind of presence. When he stood, people paid attention without being told to. 8 weeks ago, he said, I told this council that humans were soft, that their bones fracture, that they have no natural armor, that we would be throwing resources away by protecting them. He stopped. He looked at the table for a moment. I was correct about the bones, he said. I was correct about the armor. I was correct about every physical measurement I cited. He looked up. I was wrong about what those measurements meant. The chamber was very still. We measure species by what they are built with, Orun said. We look at claws, armor, venom, regeneration, lifespan. We look at the body and we decide from the body what a species is capable of. We have been doing this for 200 years, and in most cases it is a reasonable method. He paused. It did not work for humans, because what humans are built with is not in the body. He looked at Ren. A commander with 3 damaged ships and a dead crew member invented reinforcements on an open channel and made a Vorgeth fleet commander with 11 functional ships decide to retreat. She did not have more weapons. She did not have more armor. She had a calm voice and a clear head, and something we do not have a category for in our assessment models. He looked around the chamber. They built an alliance in 7 weeks out of old debts and borrowed data, and 10,000 civilians willing to carry supplies through tunnels in the dark. They fought for 11 hours and adapted each time the enemy adapted. They put their dead in the log before the battle was over and then kept fighting. He set both hands on the table. We denied them protection because we thought they would fall quickly and waste our resources. They did not fall. They held a system that the Vorgeth wanted, and they held it with less than we told them would be enough. And the Vorgeth, who are currently the most significant military threat in the Outer Rim, pulled back from them twice. He sat down. The room was quiet for a moment. Then it was not quiet anymore. The vote that followed was not about Earth's protection status. Ren noticed this. It was a small thing, but it mattered. Nobody moved to revisit the original motion, because the original motion was no longer the right question. The new motion on the floor was a restructuring of the Joint Defense Command to include human officers at the planning level, and a formal alliance framework with teeth, not just language, that committed council ships to assist human forces in the Outer Rim engagements. It passed 33-2. Ren wrote the number down in his notebook. He sent the result to Dara on the Steadfast. Her reply came back in 7 minutes. It was short. We accept. We have conditions. Send someone to Kethara first to help bury our dead. Ren read it. He sent it to Orun directly without comment. Orun responded within the hour. He was going himself, he said, not a representative, himself. 3 weeks later, on the surface of Kethara, near the wide entrance to the cave tunnels where 10,000 Luvani had sheltered through 2 battles, there were fresh graves on the plateau above. Isha stood near them. She was not crying. She had done that already in private, in the way that people who carry responsibility tend to do things that show feeling, quickly and alone, so they can go back to the work. She was just standing there, in the cold wind that came off the plateau in the late afternoon, looking at the names on the markers. Sova came and stood beside her. The old Luvani elder was small next to Isha. She looked up at the graves and then at Isha's face. "You are not what I expected," Sova said. Isha looked at her. "What did you expect?" "I read the council assessment before you came. I thought you would be, I don't know, more impressive looking." Isha looked at the graves. A small sound came out of her that was close to a laugh. "We get that a lot," she said. Sova was quiet for a moment. "Why did you come?" she said. "The council had denied you. There was no treaty, no obligation. You did not know us." Isha thought about Dara looking at the map, the red moving inward, the circle drawn around Kethara, the words not stated and understood anyway. "Because you were here," Isha said, "and we were close enough to do something about it." Sova did not say anything for a while. Inside the cave tunnel behind them, near the entrance, on the flat stone of the wall, there were words that someone had carved there. Nobody was sure yet who had done it or when. The cuts were rough, but the letters were clear. They came when no one asked them to. They stayed when every reason said leave. They bled for people they had never met. Below it, in smaller and slightly different cuts, someone else had added later. That is what soft creatures do. The wind moved across the plateau. The graves were quiet. Above them, somewhere in the dark between the stars, the red on the maps was still moving. But it was moving a little more carefully now.